If you've ever stood next to a Komatsu D575A, you already know that the word dozer doesn't really cover it. A dozer is something you see grading a parking lot off the highway. This thing is something else entirely. It stands exactly 16 feet tall. It stretches 38 feet and 5 inches from the tip of the blade to the back of the ripper. And in its full super dozer configuration, it weighs 336,400 pounds. That's 168 tons, not a machine, a moving building. And when that engine wakes up, you don't just hear it, you feel it in your back teeth. The D575A isn't just the biggest dozer Komatsu ever made. It's the biggest production dozer any manufacturer has ever made, anywhere in the world, at any point in history. That record has stood since 1991. Nothing from Caterpillar, nothing from Liebherr, nothing from anyone has come close in series production. This is the top of the food chain, the thing at the very end of the road when it comes to moving dirt. And today, we're going to talk about why almost nobody can actually afford to own one. Because here's what most people get wrong. They see the price and they think, okay, that's expensive, but it's a one-time cost. You buy it, you own it, you put it to work. That's not how it works, not even close. The purchase price on a D575A is the entry fee. It's what you pay just to get into the game. Everything that comes after, the fuel, the maintenance, the logistics, the operators, that's where the real money goes. And by the time we're done today, you're going to understand exactly why this machine breaks most people who try to own one. Let's start with buying it. Here's something that catches a lot of people off guard. You can't walk into a Komatsu dealership today and order a brand new D575A. That window closed in 2012. Komatsu stopped producing them. Every D575A that exists in the world right now was built between 1991 and 2012. And when those machines are gone, they're gone. No new ones are coming. So if you want one, you're shopping the used market, full stop. And on the used market, you're looking at roughly $570,000 on the low end for a high-hour machine, up to $1 million or more for something with a clean service history and documented powertrain work. That spread tells you everything. The difference between a $600,000 D575A and a $950,000 D575A isn't just age or hours, it's paperwork, it's proof. It's a documented trail showing exactly what was done to that machine and when. Because here's the thing about buying a used D575A without records. You're not buying a bargain. You're inheriting a maintenance bill that's already overdue, and you don't know how big it is yet. Could be $150,000. Could be $400,000. You won't know until you've already signed the papers and the machine is on your yard. In this world, no paperwork doesn't mean no problems. It means the problems are hidden, and we haven't even talked about the blade yet. The standard blade on a D575A is 24 feet and 3 inches wide. In a single pass, it can push 90 cubic yards of material. That's roughly 2,400 cubic feet of earth, moved at once. And if you spec the machine with the optional extended super dozer blade, that number goes up to 125 cubic yards per pass. That's not a typo. That's one machine, one push, 125 cubic yards. But specialized blades and ripper assemblies don't come included. Add a ripper that can dig 6 feet 9 inches into solid rock and the right blade setup, and you're easily adding another $150,000 to $250,000 in steel before the machine has turned a single track on your job site. So you've bought it, now you have to feed it. The D575A runs on the Komatsu SA12 V170E. 12 cylinders, 4-stroke, turbocharged and aftercooled, 46.3 liters of displacement, 2,825 cubic inches. To put that in perspective, a big V8 in a heavy-duty pickup truck displaces around 6 or 7 liters. The engine in this dozer is more than 6 of those combined. It makes 1,150 horsepower at wefting 800 ref-minimp. It pushes through a Komatsu torque flow, automatic transmission with 3 forward speeds and 3 in reverse. It tops out at 75 miles per hour going forward, which sounds slow until you remember it weighs 168 tons and it's pushing a blade the width of a 2-lane road. And the fuel it burns through. Komatsu's own performance data puts this machine at 33 to 54 gallons per hour depending on load. Light work, lower end. Hard production pushing or ripping. You're toward that upper number. So let's do real math. Diesel is around 40/50ths a gallon right now in 2026. A 10-hour shift burning 45 gallons an hour. That's 450 gallons. That's $2,025 in diesel in a single day. Run it 20 days a month and your fuel bill alone is $4,500 every month. That's nearly $500,000 a year just keeping the tank full. And that fuel tank holds 555 gallons. Filling it from empty isn't a job for a pump at the diesel island. You're sending out a fuel truck. You're scheduling it into the day's operations. At the scale this machine runs, even the logistics of just getting fuel to it becomes its own line item. Now here's the part that really keeps owners up at night. In the world of big dozers, people always focus on the engine. And yeah, the engine is a major cost, but the thing that bleeds you dry, the thing that experienced mine operators dread, is the undercarriage. The D575A runs on what Komatsu calls their resilient equalized undercarriage. Long track, low drive design, built specifically for this machine's weight and scale. Ground pressure with standard 860mm shoes comes out to 23 psi, which is actually pretty reasonable for something this heavy. But reasonable ground pressure doesn't mean the undercarriage is cheap to run. With 168 tons sitting on those tracks, every foot of movement, every pivot, every blade push is grinding steel against steel, and it never stops. A full undercarriage rebuild on a D575A, links, pins, bushings, rollers, idlers, the whole system, can run you $300,000 to $400,000. And in a hard, abrasive environment like a granite quarry or hard rock mine, you might be doing that every 3,000 to 5,000 hours. On a two-shift operation, that works out to somewhere between $60 and $80 per hour just sitting in your undercarriage costs, every hour. Even when the ground is soft, the clock doesn't care. Then there's the engine rebuild. The SA12V170E is tough and well-engineered, but everything has a service life. Most owners are planning for a major rebuild around the 12,000 to 15,000 hour mark. That's not a local repair shop job. That's a Komatsu field service event, specialized tooling, multiple days of downtime, and a bill somewhere between $150,000 and $250,000. And even the basic stuff isn't basic. An oil change on a D575A means draining and replacing roughly 52 gallons of engine oil and 79 gallons of hydraulic fluid. You're not doing that with a drain pan and a creeper. You're doing it with a service truck, a trained crew, and a good chunk of your shift window. The filters alone cost more than a full service on a commercial semi. Most experienced operators budget $80 to $120 per working hour for total maintenance. Run it 2,000 hours in a year, not a lot for a production machine, and you're spending $160,000 to $240,000 just keeping it alive, before anything breaks unexpectedly. Here's one people almost never think about: moving it. You cannot drive a D575A on a public road. It's 16 feet tall, more than 24 feet wide in working configuration, and it would simply destroy any standard bridge it touched. It's too wide, too heavy, and too tall. When this machine needs to move, the whole thing comes apart. The blade comes off, the push arms come off, the ripper comes off. Sometimes the ROPS cab structure has to come off just to clear a low bridge on the haul route. What's left after all that still needs 4 to 6 specialized heavy haul trailers running in convoy. Wide load permits from every state DOT along the route, pilot cars front and back, crane support at both ends for the teardown and reassembly. Moving a D575A a few hundred miles can cost $30,000 to $60,000 in transport costs alone. Across the country, double that. This is why you never see one of these pulled onto a job for a short contract. When a D575A shows up on a site, it's because there's years of work waiting for it. You plan the mobilization months in advance. You build the demob cost into your original bid. You don't bring in a D575A for a 6-month job. You bring it in for a 3-year minimum. And even then, you're watching the numbers carefully. One more thing most people don't factor in: the person running it. You do not put a rookie in a D575A. A mistake in a skid steer costs you time and maybe a fence post. A mistake in 168 tons of moving steel can destroy a $200,000 transmission in seconds, or cause a safety incident that shuts your whole operation down. The stakes aren't just bigger, they're in a completely different category. Operators qualified to run a D575A at production levels are genuinely rare. They know their value, and they charge accordingly. In 2026, experienced operators on machines of this class are pulling $45 to $75 an hour, sometimes more in remote mining rotations where they're living on site. That can add up to $90,000 to $150,000 in operator cost alone over the course of a year. So when you add it all together, the purchase, the fuel, the undercarriage, the engine rebuild reserves, the transport events, the operator wages, You're running an annual cost that a lot of mid-sized construction companies simply can't absorb. This machine doesn't fit in most business models. It was never designed to. Now, what about selling it down the road? Actually, this is where the D575A surprises people. Because production ended in 2012, the supply of machines is finite and it's only getting smaller. Every D575A that gets parted out or wrecked is one less on the planet. There's always a surface mine in Western Australia, a coal operation in the US, an overburdened stripping contract in South America that needs one. That demand is stable, and the supply keeps shrinking, which puts a real floor under the resale price. But, and this is the part that matters, the resale value is entirely tied to your documentation. A D575A with 12,000 hours and a clean, complete service history with certified powertrain rebuild records is a valuable, sought-after machine. It will sell. A D575A with 12,000 hours and missing or incomplete records is a question mark that most serious buyers simply walk away from. Every time you skip maintenance, every time you let the records lapse, you're not saving money. You're borrowing against your exit price at a bad interest rate. So after all of that, a used price approaching or exceeding $1 million, a $40,000 monthly fuel bill, a $400,000 undercarriage rebuild on the horizon, $60,000 transport events, $240,000 a year in maintenance. The obvious question is, why does anyone buy one? The answer is simple. Because nothing else does what it does. In a high production environment with enough volume to keep it busy, a single D575A replaces 3 or 4 conventional dozers. That 90 cubic yard blade capacity, that 1,150 horsepower, that ripper cutting down nearly 7 feet into solid rock. No smaller machine gives you that combination. And at the scale of a major surface mine or a large earthworks contract, the cost per cubic yard of material moved on a D575A is genuinely lower than running an army of smaller machines. The economy of scale is real, but, and this is the key, the math only works when the machine is working. This machine needs volume. Millions of cubic yards of it, stretched across years of continuous production. Sitting idle, it's just a very expensive pile of steel with a fuel bill running in the background. For the operations built to run it, the major mining houses, the largest earth-moving contractors, the people who measure their work in years and their volumes in tens of millions of cubic yards, the D575A isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. It's the only tool that makes the numbers work at that scale. For everyone else, it's a machine that will break your budget before the first undercarriage rebuild comes due. That's the real story of the Komatsu D575A. Not the horsepower figure, not the blade width, not the YouTube videos of it pushing walls of earth like they're nothing. The real story is in the operating costs, the maintenance schedules, the logistics bills, and the operator wages that add up every single month, whether the machine is turning dirt or sitting on a pad waiting for the next contract. If you've ever worked around one of these, or if you've ever been the person signing the checks for a D575A operation, I'd genuinely love to hear your story in the comments. These machines have a history, and the people who've run them have stories worth telling. And if you want more of this kind of breakdown, the real numbers behind the big iron, hit subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from. We'll see you on the next job site.